Welcome to A Cast for Crows, the Dead Screen podcast focused on a Game of Thrones. We are here to talk about Episode 8, titled Hardhome. My name is Drew.
I'm Alexa.
And I'm Joe.
And so I know we have a lot of stuff we want to cover. Try to keep this not super long, but so let's just jump right into this. I know the first scene that we were sort of presented with is Tyrion and Daenerys talking with Jorah, trying to figure out sort of what the situation is. Joe, do you sort of want to talk about that and sort of relate it back to the book and sort of see if there's any clear things that were changed or different?
Well, I can't actually. This is all past the books now, so I can't really talk about it. Like it's not a spoiler because it's all stuff we knew was going to happen. And what interested me the most was it didn't surprise me that Daenerys decided to banish Jorah again. But what kind of surprised me was that Tyrion kind of encouraged that because just because, you know, Jorah did keep him safe and, you know, it seemed like they had kind of buddied up a little bit. But personally, I feel it's the right decision, even though Jorah, you know, we know Jorah's a good guy and all that. But I think it is the right decision in the long run because when she returns to Westeros, it doesn't really make a good image if she goes back with someone who knowingly betrayed her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, but I was curious, what did you guys think of that? Were you surprised by the decision? Did you like the decision? What do you think?
So, you know, I wasn't super surprised by it, but I didn't feel like it was so very final. Like, the vibe I got from it was Tyrion's like, yeah, you know what, you probably should banish him. And she's like, all right, well, see ya. And then, like, I expected him to sort of turn around and, like, give Jorah a little wink or something. Like, don't worry, I got this under control. Like, it'll all be good. So, and like, that's just the vibe I got through it. Because, you know, he sort of talked his way out of all this stuff getting here. And, you know, he kind of set everything up this far, you know, with the slavers being like, this guy's a great fighter and you can't really go without me because blah, blah, blah. Like, he was good at sort of getting where he needed to go just by talking and sort of influencing people. So that's just the vibe that I got was he was like, you know, you probably shouldn't keep him here, but I don't feel like he's just sort of like letting Jorah go off and is forgetting about him. Like, I think he has a plan for him, but in typical Game of Thrones fashion, I have no idea what it is. That's just like the vibe I get.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was more surprised by the fact that Tyrion did kind of encourage it. But it was also just like, poor Jorah, like, this dude goes through so much for Daenerys to, like, kind of win her, like, approval back. And then he just, like, even when he heard the response, or, like, the, like, idea to banish him, he was just kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's definitely not giving up on gaining her approval again. And, I mean, he went straight to the fighting, he went back to the fighting pits dude and was like, something about Daenerys being at, like, the final thing. So basically, he's not giving up.
Yeah.
He could have just, like, walked away with his freedom, as the dude said. But he didn't.
So, do you think that, because you basically, the vibe I'm getting is as a book reader, you knew that they were eventually going to meet, but you didn't really know what was going to come of it. So did you sort of expect that to happen, or do you maybe think that this is actually what's going to go on in the book, or is this more of a show thing?
I do expect that to be similar enough to the books, but it's strange because they're having Tyrion meet Daenerys much sooner than in the books, and what I mean by that is there are still events to come that I know for sure are going to happen that, you know, they haven't happened yet in the shows. So, you know, personally, as far as Jorah, I think he's kind of doomed to a very sad death. Because, you know, let's not forget he does have the grayscale. He is he's either going to die or he's going to become a stone man. You know, probably for the purposes of the show, he will die. I just wonder, you know, he's going to go to the fighting pits and basically, you know, represent Daenerys one more time because he's still, you know, regardless, he does still support her. He probably does love her, but he may or may not survive the fighting pits. But either way, you feel like he's probably not going to survive much longer anyway. And I just kind of hope he's able to die a hero's death like Barristan did. But I'm not sure that's going to be the case for Jorah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. It's like typical where I'm just like, well, this seems interesting, but I don't really know what's going to go on from here. But I think you're right. I think that like I could see him getting in the fighting pits and sort of getting to the very end and then dying in there or something like that. I don't think he'll have a big redemption death sort of thing. So I'm with you there. So I think the next scene that was pretty big in the show was Cersei in her cell. So do you want to sort of talk about what was going on in that to sort of maybe clarify?
Yeah, sure. Basically, the Septas and the High Sparrow are trying to. Basically, they're going to keep her imprisoned until she either basically confesses her sins, and she is refusing to confess. She's holding up actually very well, but she is suffering. We saw her starving herself, and I thought it was an absolutely incredible moment to see her lick the floor to try and get a little bit of water because she's basically starving and she's dehydrated, and to see someone with her, everything she's done, and someone who's always grown up in a very prominent family, she's never experienced anything like this, and I thought it was quite amazing to see her basically reduced to trying to survive in the same way that an animal would, get any kind of food or water in any way you can, and but yeah, she is not breaking just yet. She hasn't confessed anything, even though we do know we know that she's guilty. So with those two kind of opposite ends of the scale, I was curious if you guys, do you feel sorry for her? Do you think she'll confess? And if so, what do you think her fate is going to be?
So, wasn't she sort of advised to confess by one of her advisors?
Yeah. A little bit, yeah. Qyburn did.
And so, he was basically saying, if you confess, it won't be as bad as if you don't confess. Right? That was sort of what he was getting across. So,
yeah.
What's the difference between confessing and not confessing in terms of her sentencing? Or punishment, I guess.
I can't actually tell you because I do know what will happen.
Okay.
So I don't know. I can't really answer that. I have to let you guys go on with it.
Okay, there's a problem with that because my friend was looking up like filming locations for Game of Thrones, and like when we were there, I kind of read. I had like a spoiler basically because I'm with her and she's just like reading something and I saw something, so I don't want to say anything either because I know it's gonna happen.
Okay.
So I'll just let you talk, Andy.
So you asked basically, do we feel bad for her? And I'm kind of indifferent at this point. I like that character, and I kind of felt worse for her when she was like kind of being bullied by Marjorie and like going through this sort of crisis of losing the people she cared about and not being in the position she's comfortable in. Like I kind of felt worse for her then than I do now. I don't feel super bad for her. I just like it's sort of like this is something I expected, maybe not on this level, but I expected sort of giving the Sparrows all this power was going to backfire to some degree, and I think we've talked about that in previous episodes, that she basically gave them a bunch of this power but doesn't really have much control over them. So I don't feel super bad for her. I did really like that scene of her sort of, licking the water off the floor, but I don't think she confesses. The only way I think she confesses is if she's able to twist it in a way that, like, proves her innocence or something. And so, I don't know. I think she's not as smart as her father or Tyrion or some of these other people, but she's definitely smarter than a lot of people, so I could see her finding a way in which confessing works. Like maybe, it was never her decision and she always was like kind of forced into it or something like that. But I don't know if that matters in the situation. But I just feel like there's probably some way where she's going to get into a position to where she has to confess, but it's better for her and, like it works in her favor to some extent.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
In regards to whether or not I feel bad for her, because that's all I'm really going to comment on. The thing about Cersei is like, I mean, like I like her character, but I also kind of hate her character.
Yeah.
But Cersei kind of like, the thing about it that I think makes it difficult for her is that she's this spoiled rich kid. That's what she's had. She's gotten everything she's basically, well, not everything she's wanted, because of course she ended up marrying Robert Baratheon, but she's never had to go through anything like this. She's always, like Joe said, like belonged to a prominent family. This is like something she's just never even thought of happening to her. So not necessarily that I feel bad for her, but like it's like kind of how they always show like those movies where like the spoiled bitch girl like loses all her money and like her life basically sucks because she doesn't know how to deal with it. Like that's how I see it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like she's not broken, but like it's like kind of like oh how the mighty have fallen. Kind of thing with her. So
yeah, I agree.
But like, yeah, I don't want to say anything in regards to whether or not she confesses.
Alright, let's not spoil it. I don't. You asked what we think our punishment would be, and I have no idea. I feel like this is one of those things. Like they talk about how there will be trials for, Marjorie, Cersei, and the brother, whatever his name was. But I don't know. I don't know how severe those punishments are. Like I don't know how much indication we've received in the show. Am I worried that they're going to be like hung or something like that, or is it? I have no idea. So. Just checking other ideas in the box.
One thing I did think about when I was watching is his name Qyburn? Is that his name?
Yes. Working on Frankenstein.
He was talking about, because she briefly asked him about Tommen. What I was thinking is he's like starving himself, and he's like. He said that he wasn't doing very well. I was wondering if, like, that would be what killed him. And in that sense, it would have to do with Marjorie, too. Like, him just starving himself.
Huh. That's a very interesting theory.
That's, like, what I was... Like, when I was watching that episode, that's, like, what I thought of immediately. It's like, what if that's, like, what killed him? And, like, it's all kind of been her fault while she's trying to protect everyone. She's also like inadvertently like doing all the killing. And that also ties back to Marjorie. So as obvious as she is as the person who knocks Cersei down.
Yeah.
It could be.
Huh.
So that's just what I was thinking.
I don't know, is this something we will see a resolution of this season, or is this going to roll into next season?
Yes, you will see it in episode 10, and it is the episode is fittingly titled Mother's Mercy.
Okay.
And yeah, that will. I'm pretty sure we should see Cersei's fate in that episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did get a little bit of Arya in this episode. Sort of looking back on the season, I feel like we haven't gotten as much of her as we normally do, because she's been going through this storyline that's pretty interesting, but I feel like it's been just dragging on at like a snail's pace. Like,
no, it's been very slow.
It's like you barely get like, oh, here's just a little bit more. So like today, this last episode, we got maybe 15 minutes of her, and it was like, okay, so you're a little better at, at his tasks, trying to like, I don't even know how to describe it, like basically lie correctly or something. He's hitting her less and less with a stick, I guess is an easy way to put it. And then he sort of sent her on her first assignment, I guess, which is to kill this gambler. And like the notes say here, she isn't wearing a face, which sort of goes back to me not fully understanding sort of the situation she's in, whether she's still in some sort of trial process or whether she's there and part of it,
I think it's more of a trial process, which is probably why she's not wearing a face, because she's not officially one of them yet. I think it's more just like, let's see if you can do this.
Because this is like the last time she uses her face for something, basically, and it sort of like legitimizes why she has to use different faces for different stuff in the future.
No clue.
I'm just surprised at how slowly her storyline is moving, because there's so much great material for them to work with from the books, and yet they've left almost all of it out so far. And I'm surprised to see her still as Arya going after this gambler, because in the book they do give her a new face, and the point is, part of the point surely is that she doesn't stand out as much. Like, she looks like much more of a commoner, and presumably if she screws up, no one's going to know who she really is anyway. But yeah, I was kind of shocked to see, Maisie Williams' face going after, spying on the gambler a little bit. And I guess in the show she's going to have to successfully kill this gambler in order to earn a new face. But yeah, you're right, Andy. It's definitely dragging on, but I promise there's definitely some more interesting material to come.
Hopefully they use it.
Yeah. I was going to say, hopefully to come this season and not push it off another season. I don't know, I don't know how much there's to talk about this, just because it's like just moving on real slow. Like, they take the same amount of time that they use to talk about other people's storylines, but they only talk about like this much, so it feels like it drags on a whole bunch.
Yeah, it's kind of in like little snippets of what's going on with Arya.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things that we found out this episode was that Theon / Reek finally tells Sansa that he didn't kill Bran and Rickon, which it seemed pretty obvious when the scene started happening, but it was a pretty big moment, because this is something us as viewers knew that Sansa didn't, and the rest of the world, I guess, doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Wasn't this before? Yeah, Ramsay does not know. He believes Theon killed them.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was so glad that he finally told her, because it was like just driving me insane, just kind of like, because she just keeps blaming him for something that he didn't do. I mean, obviously he betrayed Robb and kind of helped or tried to take over Winterfell, but I know that she was still really bitter about the fact that he allegedly killed Bran and Rickon. So yeah. It was really good that
it gets rid of one of his many bad things that she thinks he did.
Yeah. I mean, but I was so relieved that he told her, because it was just driving me insane that she kept being like, "You killed my brothers," and like, no, he didn't. They're still alive. Like, not all of your family is dead.
I think it is sort of that turning point that we have noted here, is that, it's, if anything, it's starting to show that there's part of him that doesn't want to be Reek. That's sort of the bare minimum. It's like part of him wants to go back to be Theon and exist as the, original Theon did, not the one who went and did all the terrible stuff.
Yeah, it was nice. I know Alexa was basically waiting for that moment every week. And here's a question for you guys, though. I think that's the moment that finally opens up the possibility of an alliance between the two. And, if that does happen, do you think they'll try to escape Winterfell, or do you think they'll try and turn the Northmen in Winterfell against the Boltons and basically try and kind of make Winterfell kind of turn against them on the inside before Stannis even gets there? What do you think?
So, if I'm answering...
I think it's the latter.
Yeah, so I think if I'm going solely as watching the show and not having any of your sort of extra knowledge that you've presented on these podcasts, I would definitely say I think they're going to escape, because I think the idea that there's enough of a like anti-Bolton sort of group of people in Winterfell right now is not super well represented. You know, there was the one lady who Ramsay eventually had flayed, and it's like that was sort of their way of showing that there was this portion of the population that is on their side. But just watching just the show, I don't think that that's where they would go. I think they would just try to escape, because it seems like their odds are much better having had escaped than trying to turn them in there. But using the information that you've presented to us, I think that's probably what they'll do. Because what I understand from you is that it's not all like, it's not everybody's committed to the Boltons. It's sort of more of this mix of
Divide.
people who are and people who aren't, and people who want more of a unity and stuff like that. And so it seems like you're saying that way, maybe there's more of this idea that Sansa and Theon sort of go through and bring this uprising from the inside, which would, might be the most interesting way it goes down if they're trying to sort of, starve Stannis' army out by not doing much.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I see. Yeah, I agree with you, because if it were just from what I've seen from the show, like when that woman was killed, it seemed like all hope was lost for Sansa.
Yeah.
But like but yeah, like from what we've heard, I mean, I would imagine that there is some kind of divide between the Bolton followers and those who still resent the Boltons for killing the Starks.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like I don't know. I feel like Sansa's done a lot of running, and I feel like she just wants to be home. If I don't know, like that's where they grew up. If they can take it back, I think they'd like to.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Sansa's character seems stronger at home. Like there's an extra sort of edge to her through this whole season, because she's sort of been there and she's, I don't know. So I would agree with the second sort of idea, but if just to show off, I think it would definitely be the first. Do you know what happens? Is it something you can't really talk about?
I know what I'm pretty sure is going to happen, but the point is, it's in the book. It's Theon and fake Arya as opposed to Theon and Sansa.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of left on a cliffhanger a little bit. But I know what I think is going to happen, and I'd be surprised if they didn't stick to it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then they haven't stuck to almost everything this season. So what do I know?
But who knows? I mean,
yeah.
I think just with the slow return of Theon, like I think that's happening for a reason. I don't think that they're like bringing him back just to be like, we're gonna leave now.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's how it works out. I'd really be disappointed if they just left.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, we also have Brienne and Podrick basically just laying around in hotel rooms in Winterfell doing nothing for 5 episodes. But you presume they're still going to have a purpose somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would be really disappointed if they just were like, okay, we're peacing out.
Yeah. So I thought this whole Hardhome sort of part of this episode was going to be the entire episode. So I don't know if we're going to get an entire episode that's sort of focused on one battle like we have the last 2 seasons. I think this was, the big battle basically that we're getting this season. But I thought it was awesome. Like I know that Joe, you were saying that you thought that this was one of the best episodes that the show has had in a while. Do you sort of want to talk about that before we go into the little details, or do you want to?
Yeah, definitely. I was telling you earlier, I think this was not only the best episode of the season in my opinion, but I think it was definitely one of the very best episodes in the whole series. And Hardhome, the battle played a large part of that, but it was also things we talked about, like seeing Cersei really suffering, and Theon making a breakthrough with Sansa and stuff like that. But as far as the battle, one thing I want to talk about is some people are saying that this was a book spoiler, and to clear it up, for the record, no, it was not. The difference is this book, or this battle, was... Jon was not at that battle. He only got an account of it in a letter from one of his Night's Watch brothers, and it was extremely haunting. Like, it was probably the closest glimpse we got of the White Walkers, and but I thought it was a terrific change to have Jon at the battle and to see all of that play out. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and but yeah, as far as the episode as a whole, I do think this is probably, that was like the battle episode. Just because I know what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, and it's probably, there isn't going to be really one full battle episode this year. Like, that was definitely it. So
yeah. Well, I feel like if this whole episode had been that one battle, it would have been excessive, because what we got was so much in a short period of time, and if it had been like dragged out, I feel like it just would have been, because like the White Walkers don't talk. They're just like there, so it's not like you're going to get like a lot of dialogue going on. So I think it was good that it was, like, near the end. And, like, the episode, don't get me wrong, I loved every aspect of the episode. It really was one of the best episodes. But the most memorable part about it was just that battle, and just seeing that ending was, like, blew my mind. So I don't think it needed a whole battle episode. And I think that itself as the battle episode is more than enough. Like, I don't think we need a full battle.
You know, Game of Thrones has had a bunch of fight scenes, but when you actually look at the number of hours that the show has run and the number of sort of fight scenes we've seen, it's pretty small. So you kind of forget how good the show is at some of these scenes. You know, it's one of the things that really drew me in the past couple of seasons, where there's sort of hour-long battle episodes, because they were so well done. And this sort of reminded you that, you know, 99% of the season has been sort of that politics and stuff going on, which is, you know, great, but they also do this really awesome fight scene, like sort of action sort of sequences. And as a scene as a whole, I think it was great from the very, very beginning, when they were sort of going through the politics of the whole thing, to the first attack, to when they sort of started coming off the mountain. Like, I thought the whole thing was paced really well. I know that when Jon was going back for the dragon glass, and he was like sort of stuck in the house with the White Walker, and that's the White Walker that I think we've seen the most of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the sort of one with the longer hair. I think he's the one who we were sort of introduced to most in the past couple seasons. Like, he was the sort of liaison between us and the White Walkers, basically. But when that fight scene, when they were in the burning sort of hut and right on the outside, you know, I've said this a million times, and I'll end up saying it again, is that you just don't know when these characters are safe, especially as a non-book reader. Like, I was like, Jon might not make it out of this. This might be the end for Jon. Like, you know, I had to just accept. I've written off. I was like, damn, man. Well, at least he had a good run. Yeah, just because these scenes are well done, and just having that extra edge of not being confident that your character can escape these situations provides like this invaluable addition to watching these things. Because, you know, if you're watching any other show, you're like, oh, that's a great fight scene, but I was nervous the whole time. I had fully expected Jon to sort of get struck down and not get up.
Yeah.
I think this battle also served as a very important reminder to all of us that at the end of the day, all of the political stuff, the squabbling, the battles in Westeros, like whether it's Cersei, whether it's Dorne, whether it's Roose Bolton versus Stannis at Winterfell, it's all petty in the end compared to what the real threat is in the end. And it was so important for them to actually show us this battle. Yeah. And that's why I love seeing it, because it reminds us that they're basically unstoppable. And it didn't. I think it was kind of a fool's errand in the end from Jon and Tormund, because it doesn't matter really whether they have a few extra 100 wildlings. That's not going to be. It's not going to be nearly enough to stop the White Walkers. We know they're stopped by like dragonglass and anything made of Valyrian steel. And Jon also showed us in like season 1, I think, when he saved Commander Mormont from the undead guy by burning him to death. We know fire kills them. So we know eventually they're gonna need a crap ton of fire. That's probably gonna have to come from Daenerys and her dragons. But that's why I love seeing that scene, is because it's a great reminder to all of us that everything else that goes on in the show, it's not all that important if enough of them don't band together to get rid of this threat.
Yeah, I think a perfect example of that is at the end when sort of what I'm assuming is the head honcho White Walker, is walking out on the dock as Jon and the other people are pulling away from it, and he basically stretches his arms out and is like, "Yo guys, watch this," and raises all of the newly killed wildlings as his own as part of sort of the White Walker army now. And I think you're right that because they've talked about it a ton, how everybody's super scared of the White Walkers, and there was nothing in the show that really justified that, aside from people telling us how terrible it all is. And I think that was the first real moment where you're like, holy shit, this is not good for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we haven't even seen the White Walkers in that long. I think last season we saw the baby get turned into a White Walker, and then obviously when Sam killed the White Walker. But really, it's been a while since we've seen the White Walkers, and I think it wasn't until it was like season 2 where we see like the army of the dead. So like for a while, it's just kind of been like, yeah, the White Walkers are like coming, and it's kind of like everyone's kind of played it off like that except for Jon. He's the only one who ever really took it seriously. And like this episode just kind of like reconfirmed how big of a threat they are, because for a while it's just kind of like they're coming, yeah, whatever, but like they're here. Like I was horrified when that happened, and just when he brought everyone back, I was like, this dude's not someone you like fuck with. Like it does make everything else seem so insignificant, because really the main threat to all the people isn't like what's going on the inside. It's like this gigantic army of White Walkers and like the undead, and like it's so easy for him to just bring any dead person back to life. Like his army is basically unlimited, because as long as people keep dying, he can bring them back. So I think that's what makes it so terrifying, is like he can keep getting more people. It's not a problem for him.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys about is, especially seeing the Night's King at the end, that was such a haunting scene where they showed Jon and Tormund kind of getting away, but then he was standing there, staring at them very intently. But what I want to know is, do you guys believe that he and his army are the unadulterated pure evil of the series, or do you think there is more behind them that we haven't learned yet?
See, I don't want to just believe that they're just pure evil, but then at the same time, there's really not a lot we know about them. I don't know if we want to discuss what we do know about the Night's King. I don't know if you want to go into that, Joe.
I mean, it's just a theory right now, so yeah, you can talk about it if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, what I know is that he was maybe a former Stark, ancient. Like, I was reading that it's like they follow when their years are when like the Targaryens took over Winterfell, correct? Or what? Westeros?
I think it was even before the Targaryens.
Okay, well, this dude's like 10,000 years before that, and he was I think the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who falls in love with a White Walker, becomes a White Walker. He might be a Stark for all we know, which is a theory, and continues to be a Lord Commander. He's super tyrannical. And then I think it's another Stark takes over for him and like kind of knocks him out of power. So that's what we know for anyone who has no idea who this dude was, because he was terrifying. but at the same, like, I don't know. I don't know if he's pure evil or not. He did not seem like he was a very nice leader to the Night's Watch. So I don't know if, like, him becoming a White Walker made him super evil. I mean, there's obviously some humanity in him, since he fell in love with a White Walker. I'm just, like, wondering how that happens. Like, they're not exactly beautiful.
Yeah, and
I don't know. It's all very strange to me.
It's just, as far as I know, there's all the evidence in the books and the show is to the contrary, but I still don't believe there is any pure evil character in this series at all. Just because that's what makes Game of Thrones so great, is it's good people with the capacity for bad actions and bad people with the capacity for good actions. And so I still like to think that there's a history behind that we don't know yet, and that maybe that theory that he is a Stark is true. And if it is true, it might even give us a hint as to where a certain Benjen Stark has gone, since we haven't seen him since, like, episode 2 of season 1, and he has to be out there somewhere,
Yeah, I refuse to believe that they just kind of, like, forgot about him in his storyline. It was just like, he just kind of went missing, and that's it.
Yeah, no chance. No chance.
But I don't know. I think just because there's so little that we do know about the White Walkers, it's hard to determine whether or not they're pure evil or if there's some kind of reason that they're doing what they're doing. So it is really difficult to tell. It would be great if we, like, were able to get some more backstory on them, because then I could determine whether or not they're pure evil or not. Because, I mean, I just don't I don't know. I don't understand why someone would just, like, do that if there's no kind of motive.
Sort of going back to this distance between just show watchers and book readers. As just a show watcher, I think they are just this sort of zombie, like, pure evil thing. But sort of as from what you're saying, Joe, and the vibe I'm getting from the books is that nobody does things purely out of evil. Like, there's always some other real motive there, whether it's a selfish motive or not a good one is one thing, but it seems like everybody who's doing stuff, whether it's considered good or bad, is doing it for a certain reason. And so because of that, I'd have to assume, at least in the book setting, that there is a reason that they're doing this, But just from the show, like, they've given us nothing to even think that there's a hint at something else. I don't think, or you said there is. I haven't caught on to it. And at least for the show purposes, I think it kind of helps to have just this one sort of unanimous evil, pure evil thing, as opposed to all of these sort of political things where you're like, yeah, well, I can see why this is good for this character, and I can get why this one's mad, but blah, blah, I think for the show point of view, like, if the last season is basically the White Walkers sort of spreading over the continent and everybody trying to, like, fend themselves off, like, I think it would assist the fact that they're just sort of this pure evil, but I don't know. I could see that changing, because I don't think it's...
no motive.
Yeah, I think that there very well could be one, but for the sake of the show, I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't.
That's a very good point, actually, because it would add another another whole dimension to the show, and this is a show that probably already has enough dimensions to it, and so I already know, I've talked to Alexa about this, that they already have several other dimensions and very important characters who have completely their own arcs that have been cut completely.
Yeah.
So I think you make a very good point that it would maybe be adding a little too much to try and focus on, like, a history of the White Walkers and how they even came to be in the first place. Although I'd love to know that, but yeah, I don't know. I still cling to the belief that, at least in the books, there's more to them and why they do the things they do and why they're such a threat to the whole world.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's just like there's obviously some kind of plan put in place, and, like, I don't know. I just don't, like, I don't know. Like, I'm turning a baby. Everyone's just like, well, what does this mean? So, at the same, I don't know. I mean, it would be good to get a backstory, but I could see how it would be adding another dimension to the show. But I don't know. I don't want to not know. It's really bothering me that I don't know what's going on with them, and they just kind of seem like these, like, really ambiguous, terrifying people.
Also worth noting that the people at the wall who don't support Jon in this are probably not going to be happy that a lot of his Night's Watch brothers were killed in that battle, and he's coming back with almost entirely wildlings. So it's basically mostly wildlings and Jon. So it'll be interesting to see, what exactly Jon is going to do with all of these people, and if they're going to kind of agree to fight side by side, or if they don't, then he's got very serious problems right at the wall, not even including the White Walkers. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see too.
So, sort of just getting a little bit more background. When winter comes, these White Walkers basically sort of come with it every time, right?
Yes, and I would say at this point winter is here.
Yeah. And so it seems like they are, directly involved with that one way or another. And so whenever winter comes, they basically move up and attack the wall. And their goal is to get over the wall. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
I think so, but I don't actually know.
When they built the wall? Wasn't it the last big winter when they built the wall because there was a threat?
The wall it's thousands of years old, I know that. All I remember is that before this coming winter, they had what was supposed to be called like a 10 years of summer, something like that. So it was like many, many winters ago when they built the wall.
So when winter comes, they basically just attack the wall until they are exhausted and then go back and replenish or something?
See, I have no idea.
Okay.
Honestly, none. I fail, I know.
And there's not been many times on these podcasts where we've been able to stump you like that. I actually have a question that has nothing to do with what we've talked about. I had a friend say something about how it's differed from the book or may have differed from the book, and he wasn't sure, and I said I would relay it to you and see what the situation was. So what he was saying was that it was either Marjorie or Cersei wasn't thrown into prison in the books, or is that just wrong? Without spoiling stuff.
Yeah, I don't think Marjorie was thrown into prison. Like, she's on trial for things like Cersei is, but to my knowledge, I don't remember her being thrown in a cell, and Loras was he wasn't convicted of anything at all. He's somewhere else completely. So that is very, very different.
Okay.
But yeah, Marjorie wasn't thrown into a cell at all. So yeah, that was very interesting to see her in a cell in the show.
Okay. Just something little that somebody had asked. All right, so I guess this was episode 8. We only have 2 more for the rest of the season, and I feel like we have a lot of storylines that I want at least some sort of conclusion to that I'm hoping to get over the next 2 episodes.
I don't think we're going to get the conclusion to some of them. I know it seems safe from the descriptions of the final 2 episodes that we're probably not going to get the battle at Winterfell.
Which I know makes you happy.
Yes, God, I'm absolutely. I was so relieved. Easily the most relieved I've been while watching the show ever. But we will definitely get conclusions to some storylines, and hopefully Arya's will speed up a little bit more along the way.
All right. Well, we will be back next week to talk about episode 9, and then just have one more after that.
Later, guys.